How did my family get in my office? A conversation with Bonnie Artman Fox. That is our topic for today. Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent. Hi, everyone. This is Mac Pierre, attorney, mediator, arbitrator, working throughout Florida and Texas. And welcome back to the LMI podcast, where we talk about law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. And today I have a special guest, Bonnie Artman Fox. She is an author, speaker, a person who has spent years training others on how to deal with conflict, especially conflict in the workplace. So Bonnie, how are you doing today?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Max? Good to have you home.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we were talking before the recording that I just flew back from Chicago yesterday. And so today is the fourth Friday, April 25. In the past, I used to be pretty slow getting these videos out, but now I knock them out pretty quick. And so even though today is Friday, I should get this out by the end of the day, hopefully. And so we can start spreading, your message. And so your message is on how to deal with workplace conflict, but not just workplace conflict, but conflict in your own personal life, internally, interrelational conflicts in marriage. So you've spent a lot of time, doing this kind of work. And I will screen share to show people your book that you have authored, and that is How Did My Family Get in My Office? Surprising Ways Your Upbringing Impacts You at Work and What You Can Do About It. And so we're all about solutions on this channel, and that's why I like to have people like you come on so that you can tell us, how do we deal with conflicts in our personal lives, especially when it's at work. And of course, on the left is your website, bonnieartmanfox.com, if people want to check you out. And it has everything about you. I went through it. And so thank you so much for the information that's there. Folks can check it out. But let's get started. Why don't you first off introduce yourself to tell us a little bit more about who you are, your background. I know you were a nurse. That's your background in training, but you've kind of evolved and taken that experience to help people in a different way. So please, Bonnie.
Thank you. Yes, I started out as a nurse, but I couldn't take the blood and guts of nursing. So I went into psychiatric nursing and worked in the addictions field for many years, and had a mentor who encouraged me. She said, Bonnie, people get better quicker when the family is involved and looking at the whole system. And so she had encouraged me to go on to become a licensed marriage and family therapist, which I did for many years. I had my own practice on the west suburbs of Chicago. And I found that as people were coming into my office and in my private practice, that they were also dealing with not only family issues, but also with upset stomachs, anxiety, sleepless nights from dysfunctional workplaces, from what I learned later were abrasive bosses. And that led me then to...
You said abrasive bosses?
Abrasive bosses, abrasive leaders who are very, very good at what they do, and yet interpersonally, how they interact with people is condescending, overreactive, 0 to 10 in a matter of seconds in their reactions. And that then led me then eventually to become an accredited boss whisperer, which is my work today of working with executives to turn around abrasive behavior. But throughout that theme of my own journey was I was in a work setting where I was one of those people walking on eggshells, never knowing when my boss was going to explode, call people names, have an emotional outburst. And I didn't know what to do about it. This was way back early in my career when I was actually initially as a nurse. And back then there really wasn't coaching. And so I went to therapy. And the therapist asked why I was there. And I started talking about this work situation. And she said, well, tell me, how was conflict handled in your upbringing? And I thought, what does my family have to do with, I'm here for my work situation? She said, well, what did people do when they were upset? And I said, well, we always had family meals. We went to Disney World. And she, that's great. But what did people do when they were upset? I wasn't getting it, Mac.
Yeah.
And finally, it dawned on me that there was silence, that we didn't know how to deal with upsetness and to deal with conflict. And she said, sounds like your family's in your office.
Oh,
And that began my own personal work of looking at how my family dynamics and how my pattern in my family upbringing was to be the people pleaser, to smooth things over when there was conflict. And I began then my own personal journey of developing my own skills of how to speak up for myself, to becoming assertive, and getting my family out of my own office. And that led to the work I'm doing today. So as a little bit of background of the how that title came to be.
got it, got it. And so, can you tell us then a little bit about how does people's upbringing, shape their the ways they act towards each other in the workplace? You call yourself a boss whisperer. That's a very interesting way of putting it. But tell us more.
Well, as early as 5, up to age 5 or 6, we learn how we're going to deal with conflict based on what is modeled to us by our parents or grandparents, our aunts or uncles, whoever raises us. And unknowingly, those imprints are left upon us. So when things get tough, that becomes our go-to reaction. Mine growing up was to be the people pleaser. Some people become avoiders. Some people become the jokester that when things get tense, they crack a joke. Some people are controlling in order to bring order out of chaos.
Mm.
It all is affected by the dynamics that we live in, the events that happen when we're growing up, and what was modeled to us. And I really want to emphasize that this isn't to blame our parents or whoever raised us. It's simply to look back at our family upbringing to understand what were those family conflict patterns that were modeled to us, and who do we want to be as adults today. And the good news is with self-awareness and with emotional intelligence skills, we can take those awarenesses and develop positive, productive conflict management skills. It all starts with awareness.
Okay, so tell us more about awareness and the boss and the leaders in the workplace. What would you tell a typical employer, who's responsible for employees, but they're also kind of the problem themselves?
Well, the abrasive leaders that I work with aren't looking for my services. So I just want to be clear about that.
Yeah.
And the person who would contact me is the manager, often an executive leader, an HR professional who has been receiving a series of complaints
Yeah.
about how this top performing leader interacts with employees or the chaos that they create in the culture. And the employer, the organization is at a dilemma. They want to keep this person because they are often a high revenue generator. They have expert knowledge that helps the organization, and yet their behavior is creating chaos in the organization where maybe they're losing other good employees because of how this abrasive leader treats
Mm.
their employees or coworkers. So the manager of that person or HR professional, executive leader would be contacting me and saying, we have this situation. Can you help us? And they often have had several conversations up to that point with the individual. And maybe the individual improves for a period of time, but then gradually those abrasive behaviors show up again. And at this point, it really comes down to they lack the self-awareness of how they come across. And the boss whispering model that I'm accredited in, that was developed by Dr. Laura Crawshaw, is all about helping these high-performing leaders gain awareness of the negative perceptions of the impact of their words and actions on others. And it starts with them, with the employer intervening and saying, we care about you, we want you here, and this behavior can't go on. And at
Got it.
that point, they're given the choice, the abrasive leader is given the choice to participate in coaching to help turn around these negative perceptions or not. The employer, the organization has to be willing to follow through on consequences if the abrasive behavior continues. And that's a key component of this coaching process working.
Got it. So I assume no one likes to be called an abrasive leader, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
you say they would not be the ones contacting you because they're not even aware that their issues is affecting the workplace negatively.
Mhm.
Um, so I'd like to know kind of like how do you then break the ice to them? Hey, guess what? You're the problem. Like I would, but before we get there, you in one of your materials, I saw the phrase, conflict undermines productivity.
Mhm.
That that the baggage that people bring from their personal lives impacts the workplace and the business's goal of making money for their shareholders, but also can produce a lot of legal liability, right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons it's good to have you on this channel
Mhm.
to talk to the audience members who are lawyers and mediators, because nobody wants to wind up in court,
Mhm.
because there's wrongful termination, lawsuit being filed, or an employee who felt that they were being victimized, by an abrasive leader. So you're really dealing with the root causes of the issue to get them out of the way so that they're no longer a problem. So with that, help us understand how do you then break the ice and get somebody to start changing for the better?
Mhm. Yes, I really want to underscore that by the organization not intervening and continuing to allow the abrasive behavior to continue, they are placing themselves at a risk for a PR disaster or for a
Hmm.
lawsuit because of the way that they are treating people.
Yeah.
So yes, that's so important. That is often overlooked because this person is such a high performer. Now, to your question about bringing this to the leader who is
Yeah.
exhibiting these abrasive behaviors, gaining self awareness, it goes back again to the employer, the manager of that leader, to have that initial conversation. That's not my job as the coach.
Yeah.
It is the employer's job to say, again, we want you here. This cannot go on. And we want to offer you help. And then they give them the choice of participating in the coaching. Once the leader who is exhibiting the abrasive behavior contacts me, engages in the coaching process, I introduce myself as, hey, I don't work there. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
Consider me your co-researcher to understand what are these negative perceptions that people have about your leadership style, about how you're communicating. And they give me permission to interview 6 to 8 coworkers to identify and understand what these negative perceptions are. And then I compile a feedback summary, taking out all identifying information, because, of course, there is some concern about retaliation.
Yeah.
And I present then the feedback summary to the leader who is exhibiting the abrasive behavior. And as you can imagine, it can be pretty tough to go through this several page document. It lists out all of their strengths. It also identifies themes of how they come across. For example, condescending, over control, micromanaging, favoritism. And then there are examples of how this person displays these type of behaviors, and again in a way that takes out identifying information, but it lifts the blinders, because again they're genuinely they lack self-awareness. I love working with them because I find deep down inside they're really good people. They genuinely don't realize how they're coming across. By the end of that, receiving the feedback summary, going through it line by line, hearing their strengths as well as the negative perceptions, the most common response I hear is, this isn't who I want to be. This isn't who I thought I was. I had no idea. This is how I'm being perceived. And that's when the coaching can begin. The defenses are lowered. And no, not always, of course, they don't always agree with everything that's in the feedback summary. But for the most part, there's a willingness to turn around those behaviors. And the coaching program has an 82% success rate.
Wow.
So there is hope. And really, what these leaders are often afraid of is appearing incompetent. This goes back to upbringing. Very often, they learned in their upbringing, in order to stay safe and protect themselves, they had to fight. They had to be overly aggressive in order to stay safe or to create calm out of chaos that was going on in their home, or maybe what was modeled to them, whether by a parent or maybe a coach in their upbringing. But these are behaviors that are often learned. And again, it's a way of protecting them. And from a neuroscience perspective, these are self-protective behaviors it's the knee-jerk reaction of what they do in order to stay safe.
Okay, so I understand, what you're saying about how it connects back to the upbringing, and sometimes it goes back to the person's habit that they formed early on about fighting back. You listed earlier a whole bunch of ways people might manifest, the different ways of dealing with conflict. I guess when you said one way is trying to take control to remove chaos from the situation is, I
Mm-hmm.
think, one way that I've probably dealt with it. And
Mm.
again, you don't realize it. These are just
No,
ways you grow
right.
up and you
Yes.
think it's normal.
Yes.
And it takes, years later for you to look back and maybe get to become a mediator. And you're like, oh my goodness, I was a problem. So, but thank you for that kind of work that you do in helping bring this up to
Mhm.
people. So behind you, there's a word and a definition, and I think people who are watching this are going to wonder. Well, so there has to be a purpose to this. Can you talk a little bit more about it?
Yes, thank you. In my book, How Did My Family Get in My Office? It's a compilation of stories of real life leaders of how they shared with transparency and vulnerability how conflict was handled in their upbringing. And as they gained self awareness about their family upbringing and the impact on their conflict style, how they changed their conflict pattern for the better. And they provide their own productive conflict management strategies at the end of each chapter.
Mhm.
As after I had compiled all of the stories and was looking for a theme of how did they do it? Because it takes a lot of courage to look within and look back at the hurts and maybe even trauma or wounds,
Yep.
emotional wounds from our upbringing. I came upon this word pertinacity. And it's a real word in the
Pertinacity.
dictionary that is a combination of persistence and tenacity. And it means sticking with what's difficult no matter what. And it's a combination of courage, conviction, and a little bit of stubbornness.
Hmm.
And when I found that word, I thought, that's it. That's what these leaders did, that they with courageous conviction, they looked back at their family upbringing to gain that self-awareness and change the pattern for who they want to be and how they deal with conflict. And that's just a personal mission
Yeah.
for me, is changing the conflict pattern for the next generation. I did
Mhm.
that work in private practice as a marriage and family therapist,
Yeah.
and it's still very, very important to me of changing conflict patterns for the next generation.
Gotcha. And so, if the pattern is broken, for somebody in the workplace, it would also spill over to their personal life as well, and
Yes.
affect their children and their families.
Yes,
Okay.
and thank you for highlighting that because I often hear that from both the employer as well as the leaders that I'm coaching directly, that how this work helps them both in their personal life as well as in their professional life. They came to me through how they were showing up in the workplace, but it has a positive ripple effect in all of their relationships.
Yeah. So say it please one more time.
Per- Pertinacity.
Pertinacity.
Mhm.
Okay, I've never said that before in my life. Pertinacity. So one thing you talk about in one of your other videos is this parable of the carrot, the egg, and the ground coffee beans, and
Mhm.
how adversity will impact us, but it depends on how you allow it to
Yes.
impact you. Could you
Yes.
go through that a little bit and connect it to the work that you do and how people in the workplace can benefit from the ways they use or let themselves be abused by adversity and problems?
Yes. Very early in my career, this is way, way back in the 20s, when I was in my 20s, I came upon a quote by Chuck Swindoll that said, life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we react.
Got it.
And it has just always stuck with me of whatever we face, whatever I face, it's my choice of how I choose to respond.
Okay.
And hence the name of my business today is a conscious choice.
Okay.
And throughout my career, when I was working for that abrasive boss, and it led me to going to therapy, I made the conscious choice that I love this work and I don't want to leave. And when the therapist said, sounds like your family's in your office, I saw it as an opportunity for my growth. It was probably one of the hardest times in my life to look at my own
Yeah.
wounds and hurts from my own family upbringing and events that happened in my life.
Yeah.
And yet that was so healing in helping me to change my conflict pattern. And little did I know then how it would be a foundation to the work that has really been the focus of my career. So to me, it all does go down to choice of choosing how I will respond, and that things don't happen to me, they happen for me as an
Correct.
opportunity for me to grow. And also want to emphasize this doesn't mean that we stay in situations that are abusive.
Yeah.
We all have to make that choice for ourselves. I chose to stay. I certainly had the support of therapy and a therapy group and friends and surrounding me through that journey. And it eventually led to another opportunity within that same organization. And I could leave knowing that I learned what I needed to learn. And it led to further growth for me and career advancement.
Yeah. And so connecting it back, I guess, in your parable, or in the parable, I don't think you made it up, but it was somebody
Yeah.
else, and you were counting it. You know, a carrot is hard, but then it becomes soft because of the boiling water.
Hmm.
Egg is fragile, but it becomes hard because of boiling water.
Hmm.
But grounded coffee changes the water. And so I guess one of the takeaways is all three, carrot, egg, and coffee go through the exact same condition, whether it's environmental or heat, but they go through the exact same process of pain or adversity, but they come out changed. Okay, whether it's from hard to soft, from soft to hard, um, but the last one changed the environment and change the context in which they were. And I guess from your own personal testimony, from your own personal story, that's what you've done, right? You took what is it? The lemon's life gave you made lemonade from it. Okay, and
Hmm.
so you're giving
Hmm.
back to others in many different ways. And so, but so do you see that that's what you're trying to do in the lives of other people whenever you're going to these workplaces?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. And especially for the abrasive leader who becomes emotionally intelligent in terms of how they respond in interpersonal interactions going forward, and because of their own choice to grow. and look in the mirror of what it's like to be on the other side of them.
Yeah.
And instead of blame or finger point, to say, okay, here, how is this an opportunity for me, and to become better as a result of this?
Gotcha. See, it's life changing and it's culture changing,
It
and
is.
it impacts the workplace's bottom line as well, not just from a
Yes.
financial aspect, but also from a legal, put cover ourselves aspect as well.
Very much. When I, as a part of the coaching process, I do those initial interviews with the coworkers. And then about midway through the coaching process, I do a circle back pulse check interview to check in with them to see what are their current perceptions of working with the leader after there has been coaching, a few months of coaching. And they often say, I'm having a very different conversation with you
Mm,
than I did a few months ago. And because of how I'm seeing this leader change, it's making me more self aware of how I'm showing up and how I'm dealing with conflict, and has had a positive ripple effect on our entire culture because we're all
mhm.
more
Yep.
mindful, more aware of how we're interacting with each other. They also tell me that they have so much more respect for their organization and for the executive, for the HR department, for intervening and holding the leader who was exhibiting abrasive behavior accountable for respectful and professional behavior. And that then increases the employee retention, the
Yep.
productivity, the morale, the overall organizational health, by taking a stand and not allowing abrasive behavior.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. Employee morale, I can see would be a big, big benefit, in
Mhm.
that. And I can also see
Mhm.
how this would spill over to other organization types like police departments. I can
Mhm.
imagine the military context,
Mhm.
especially places where strong personalities, I guess, tend to, be attracted. And we all have issues. And so we all need to deal with them. All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. I'm going to screen share again. And the best way for people to get a hold of you, what would you say that is?
My website is bonnieartmanfox.com. I'm
Okay.
also active on LinkedIn. I would love to connect with your listeners.
Awesome. All right. Bonnie Artman Fox of bonnieartmanfox.com. Thank you so much, for this talk today. And don't be a stranger. You're always welcome back. We like to keep these conversations going. And so I appreciate you coming on today.
Thank you. Thank
All
you,
right,
Matt.
guys. Until next time, lmipodcast.com to check this video and all the other ones that talk about law or conflict resolution. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.